thank you for coming on the show. And,
Sure.
I've been excited to talk to you. I started my business. Well, I started my career in insurance. I think I told you this when we met at Avantex last year as an
Yeah.
equitable life agent. And I saw
Nice.
a lot of professionals who were having success becoming experts in the insurance, estate planning, and trust work. And that was when I first sort of got my eyes open to this whole world of, providing advice and helping people planning wise that was way outside just picking investments and saving for college, right? And I thought it was fascinating. So when we were talking about this, I know a lot of advisors, they don't make it their specialty. It's not their level of expertise. They try to refer it on, pass it on. And I thought what a great podium for you to stand on because you are so passionate about it. But maybe
Yeah.
just sort of take a step back for a minute for the listeners because we have a lot of advisors. We obviously have end investors too, but there may be a lot of advisors that would want to, potentially learn more about what you're doing and how they can maybe partner up with you even. I don't know, but
Sure.
um, yeah, just talk a little bit about your background and how you kind of got into this direction of your business.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate that. I enjoyed talking with you each time I've met you so far. I'm glad you're doing this for other advisors. And yes, I am looking for other advisors to join what I'm doing. I actually have an office to fill, and I need an advisor in Greenville, South Carolina. So my journey began quite early in childhood. I am the daughter of a parent that suffered from clinically diagnosed mental illness, and my that was my mother. And as I grew into a financial advisor, I learned that there was a gaping hole in how financial advisors approach families. No one was addressing the elephant in the room, the scary heirs. Our world has become so toxic with all the A's: ADHD, ADD, Asperger's, Alzheimer's, alcoholism, all the A's. And financial advisors are just not addressing these special financial needs for the special needs loved ones of the clients that we work with. And it's because it's hard. It's the language, the trust language is hard to get a grip on and to understand and to speak about, and the liability is scary. But these demands that a lot of parents and older parents of adult children face have a huge impact on legacy planning, tax planning, and financial advice, especially for surviving spouses or widows or single parents.
Hmm. Well, I mean, obviously, you've made some waves lately, and some PR got picked up by Yahoo Finance, and some other platforms, and people are really starting to pay attention to this. I know mental health has become at the forefront, right? Really since COVID, and it seems like it's accelerated it. There's still a lot of people who write and publicize reports that our kids aren't caught up, and the damage that was done from not being in classrooms and being situations like that. And the financial markets are so complex, right? The products are incredibly complex. They're getting more complicated now. The triple levered ETFs, and obviously, Simon, we're in the private market side of the business, right? And private debt, private equity, and infrastructure, and hedge funds, and there's so much to keep straight. I would imagine like a lot of what you have to do is just pure education when you're dealing with.
And because my field is so specialized, I really keep my client base to anybody whose net worth is over 1 million.
Mhm.
So a lot of them do understand a lot of, well, maybe not hedge funds and maybe not private equity, but they do understand most of the more simple topics like the mega backdoor Roth or those types
Right.
of things. What happens to me is that I'm kind of uniquely tuned due to my own upbringing to noticing kind of key phrases that are used or the avoidance of topics and certain other investor behaviors that would indicate that there's some unresolved issues. And so, or that there may be a scary heir or a special needs loved one that the investor has to manage a whole life of income on behalf of. Or maybe they've had to set boundaries, both financial and physical, from their heir if he or she suffers one or more of the more aggressive forms of or manipulative types of mental illness. So I think it just really helps to have somebody who understands those aspects of your financial life. It doesn't matter if you have a lot of money or if you have a little bit of money, but there's special needs heirs all over the spectrum. And what's happening is our higher net worth individuals, lucky for us, are not getting the education on that side of it. How do they still care for their heir, still give their heir money past their death, but don't let them kill themselves with the money if they're an addict, or don't mess up their special needs benefits from the government if they're special needs. Or if it's a business owner that's 80 years old and he's selling his building and his wife has dementia, who's managing their finances? How's that going to work? So what financial advisors really should know nowadays is that there are lots of trust companies that you can work with and partner with. You can still get paid on the assets, and you are the point person. You don't have to act as the trust protector or the trustee or the corporate entity that doles out the payments on the invoices, but you are a part of that process. And it doesn't have to be that process where, you know, you're always getting bombarded by phone calls from scary heirs. Those calls all go to the corporate trustee. And the corporate trustee just checks with you and says, we have this invoice to pay. If you have any information, let us know. If not, we're going to pay it according to the terms of the trust. So it is not really as scary as I think financial advisors think it is. And the client isn't as uninformed as you think that they are. They're actually quite well informed, because the clients that are not business owners, or their net worth is maybe under 500,000, they get a lot of education through school systems and through not-for-profits and through government benefit associations. But the high net worth don't. They're not living in that circle, so they don't get those benefits. So as a financial advisor, it's kind of your job to make sure that you can tell the client, look them in the face and say, hey, I know your son's an alcoholic. There are financial products you can use, and there's trust language you can use to make sure that, yes, we don't give him a bunch of money to hurt himself with, but we can drip money on him, and we can give him money for health, education, maintenance, support, maybe not comfort, but for other things. And so if he gets cancer after you die, you can still take care of him, even though you can't maybe give him money right now.
I was talking with some friends, and I live outside Philadelphia, and Allen Iverson's a big celebrity that played basketball for the Philadelphia 76ers. And I remember, like, he was really kind of falling on hard times, lost a lot of his money. He had a cackle of followers and hanger-ons that he always supported during his playing days. And apparently he had like 40, 50 people on his payroll. Anyway, long story short, apparently he has money again. I guess this is again hearsay, but like, he had built it into his contract with Adidas or Nike, like, to give him money over stages, like that he couldn't have it all. Like, guess they built it out that way so that you don't have exactly what happens. You go burn through it. And they we're talking about kind of that same idea here, right? Like creating a construct so that they can't burn through it all, but they get their needs met, right? And that's kind of what we're really getting into here.
So there's two sides to the coin. Well, probably three. You have athletes and people that get rich quickly and don't know what to do. So you can structure their payouts, celebrities and such like that. And then you have special needs folks, and then you have scary heirs. So there's products all along that spectrum that you can use. And, just the toxicity of our environment and all the special needs people we have out there, the products are just starting to come on board more and more every year.
I have this in my extended family. I know of parents that have a special needs child now in his early 30s, and they're in their late 60s, like,
Yeah.
and they have another child that's grown but has all kinds of challenges with kids in here and there, can't take care of them. So they're supporting all this, and they're not going to stay around forever. So this is a perfect example of kind of what it's actually a special needs and a scary heir kind of in one. You see that a lot.
Yeah, and sometimes you see where there's a child with no issues, and then there's that child with um, aggressive bipolar disorder. Not that all bipolars are aggressive, but there's a spectrum and there's all types of bipolar folks. And one thing that's common to most bipolar people are that they're very smart and they're very manipulative. So the parents or grantors are thinking in their minds, my gosh, I don't want to leave money to my son that has no issues because my son that does have issues, for example, is going to go after my other son and make his life a living nightmare. And so you can kind of use the corporate trustee for that, or you can use some some types of annuities you can use, but it just depends. I mean, annuities are a little more flexible in the sense that they can cancel the annuity and take the money and lose quite a bit of it. Call JG Wentworth, get my money now, that type of situation. But yeah, there's a product for everything, and lucky for you, for your extended family relationship, you know an advisor that can help.
I'm absolutely going to talk to you about that after.
But I
So,
think what's really important to note is it's a little bit of a story, so I'll kind of make it brief. In 1990 or so, and a little bit preceding 1990, we have genetically modified our corn, wheat, and soy. And what that did was cause a bunch of cases of spina bifida. And so the government enacted this rule where we had to fortify all of our breads, wheats, flours, pastry, pasta, pizza, things that kids eat with folic acid, and also make pregnant women take folic acid so that they don't have spina bifida babies. Well, it helped to a certain extent, but what they've learned now is that 60% of the population, that's fine. That works wonderful, but 40% of the population can't process folic acid because the natural form is folate. And if you give somebody with a genetic predisposition that can't process folic acid, then they can't even process folate. And if you can't, if your folic acid folate level is, if your folate level isn't optimal, then you can't process toxins out of your system. So they've caused an entire 3 or 4 generations to develop mental illness. And it starts with ADHD, it rolls into bipolar disorder, ends in schizophrenia, depression, all types of different mental illnesses. So this is not a made up problem that nobody knows about. It's pretty well known. There's books about it. There's, I think a lot of people read the book Dirty Genes, but from a financial advisor's perspective, we have to know what's going on. I mean, I have a master's in economics, so we have to know what's going on economically. We have to know what's going on product wise. Look at all the AI products coming out on the market now. And we have to know what's going on in our clients' lives. And what's going on is that there is mental illness in at least one of every client's relatives that you know of. Every client has a relative because 40% of the population can't process folic acid, and it's in all of our food. All of our pasta, pizza, pastry, the only way to get around it is to buy European.
wow. I mean, I have certainly know how bad the processed food situation is in this country. And I was just listening to Trump talk about, Europe won't take our food, right? Because we put so much crap on it, treatments. But
Right.
that's an education to me. I had no idea about the folic acid and the link between that and bipolarity and mental illness.
Lots of different illnesses. I mean, you couple it with all the toxicity in the water and the toxicity in the, they spray the inside of bags to preserve the bread and the chips and the stuff like that. I mean, there's toxins everywhere,
Awful.
everywhere.
I
And,
Well,
that's
that's
the way
led
it
to the
is
big
here.
growth in organic food, right? And that's like
Right.
I'm paying an extra dollar and a half for an avocado that wasn't treated with some kind of chemical.
Right. Yep. So it's just one more thing we have to be aware of as advisors, that this is the world we live in, and we have to help the clients manage wealth for the lifetime of these special needs heirs. That is an extra burden financially.
So, what are some of the typical pitfalls that you see advisors or their clients make when it comes to kind of trying to take steps to handle these type of situations?
I see a lot of advisors, like I said earlier, just not asking the question. You have to say at the end of your conversation of your suitability gathering and your initial meetings and things like that, you have to say, do you have any heirs that are special needs? Do you think you will inherit an heir from one of your adult children that could be a special needs person that would have a financial burden on your or an impact on your finances? Do you have Alzheimer's or incapacity in your lineage? You have to ask these questions. And I think for advisors that care, most advisors have that question, the start of that question in their financial profile, because they'll say, how's your health? Do you have insurance?
Right.
We just need to add, do you have special needs, scary heirs, or incapacitated loved ones to our profiles?
Yeah. Um, would you say that that comes up 30% of the time, 40% of the time when you're sitting down with a lot of new folks that you're engaging with? Or is it?
I bring it up every time, and
Oh,
I
you do,
never.
but does it actually surface as a real thing for a large, I mean, is it something you see 3 out of 10?
Yeah. I'd say probably 50% of the time, mostly because of my advertising is for scary heirs.
Well, right.
But I would say if you were not advertising for folks that have scary heirs, then you would see it probably 50% of the time, because sometimes it's not your burden, and sometimes the clients have put up their boundaries that that their therapist has told them to put up, because they just don't talk to those kids anymore, or they're
Mhm.
estranged,
Right.
or they're written out of the will or something. But I mean, that's when I have that conversation. Do you know you don't have to have an estranged child? You can say, my estranged child can only inherit these assets if they have health issues, because if that child had cancer, or if that child was an alcoholic and regained his sobriety, you probably would, from beyond the grave, want to still help them. And there's legal language you can put in your trust document to do that. So,
Well, if you put it in that they can't access any kind of legacy assets unless they have a health issue such as an alcoholic or a drug addiction, does that sort of work almost against them? Now they want to prove they're an addicted person so they can get access to money. I mean, it could,
so it's kind of a blanketed statement the attorneys use. It's called a HEMS statement: health,
yeah,
education, maintenance, and support. And there's certain categories that fall under that. And corporate trustees won't dole out money anyway. They will only pay invoices.
right.
So, it's
They have to
pretty
show they're at a
controlled.
clinic, a rehab, or something like that.
But you could have a contract that says you have a 5-in-1 or a 3-in-1, which means 3 times a year you can ask for $10,000, or 5 times a year you can ask for 1,000, or whatever you want to. You can set it up any way you want.
Yeah.
But typically for the addicts, you don't set it up unless there's a very small amount of money that they can't hurt themselves with.
Do you ever encounter reluctance from like the people that work at these banks? Some individual at the end of the day is the person, is a human being who has to be named to make these decisions. You may be an employee of a bank or a trust, but like you said, some of these people can be nefarious, manipulative, and dangerous. And I've had experience with them, especially bipolar people. Know it very well personally. Is that a challenge ever? Like, do people are like, I don't
That is
want this
always a
person showing
challenge.
up at my house
Yeah.
asking me to cut a check.
Yeah, if you'll notice, I don't have high SEO on my website on purpose, because I really don't want to be found by the scary heirs. I'm very close with my clients. I know my client themselves, I know their family, and I know their trust protector.
Right.
And so the banks are kind of shielded because they have security. But what I've found in my career is you really need the financial advisory relationship, because we take notes throughout history for 10 years or more. And we have the intention of the grantor who wrote the trust all in our notes. So you get your financial advisor and then you have your financial advisor help you find a corporate trustee, because that corporate trustee, when you die, can look at your case and say, we don't want to take this. then you go back to your financial advisor and we can find you another corporate trustee that will take the case. And if not, then we know certain things like we can have a trust protector or we can assign whoever in the family is willing to take the duty on. But we can't do it, but we know how to get it done. And so that's why it's so important to have your financial advisor involved in this corporate trustee relationship, because if the scary heir says, hey, I want to contest this document after your death, we have 10 years of notes we can take to court and sit. We don't even have to go to court. We just hand the notes over to the attorney. The attorney shows it to the judge what the grantor's intention was, and the case gets shut down and nobody loses any money except for that initial hearing, which is usually like $10,000 to an attorney. So I mean, there's so much we can do as financial advisors just because we have that relationship and we know the grantor's intent. We know what those parents intended on doing with that money after beyond the grave.
That's fascinating. So you really like a backup system for these clients as the advisor.
Yeah, there's another backup system that's really neat to know for all of us advisors and clients. There's such a thing called a beneficiary agreement in some states, not all states, but some states. And if you write a trust saying, let's say you have 2 kids and you write a trust and you say the assets are to be doled out a certain way and you die and the kids decide that they don't like what you said, they can go to an attorney and say, we want to have a beneficiary agreement written and we want to dole the assets out differently. And we'll both sign the beneficiary agreement. And some attorneys, not all, but some attorneys will say, okay, that'll cost you $16,000 or $10,000 or $20,000, and they'll do it, even though they really shouldn't. I've seen it done. It was really shocking to me. But if you add a charity to your trust document as a beneficiary, charities aren't allowed to sign beneficiary agreements. So you can keep your trust intact and like ironclad, and it will not get dissolved if you have a charity in it.
Oh,
That's a nice little tidbit.
that is a tidbit, which saves me asking you a question. Was there a tidbit in the tax realm that you could pass on to our listeners? And you just did. One question I did have, well, I've heard this numerous times, and you didn't have to deal with this with the silent generation, but the boomers, let's face it, a lot of wealth has been accumulated in the boomers. And now there's the big transfer, which is going to go to the millennials. Apparently me, the Xer, we're not getting anything. I don't know what happened there. I don't know why. We're just boring. We're the lost generation that nobody cares about the Xer. I don't know how we're just too small. I don't know what happened.
So we see both sides, so they don't want us to talk.
Yes, that's right. That's right. We remember no internet, no 401k, then right. So
And all that gangster rap too. I mean they want us to be quiet.
Yeah, right. No NWA. So I wanted to ask you this because people keep bringing up like these kids, these heirs are like asking their parents for the money now. Like, I don't want to wait till you're dead. I actually want to buy a house now. House prices are extremely unaffordable with interest rates now. We've got the kid, we're millennials, we're 35, we're right. I think the oldest millennial is like 42 now. Do you see a lot of that? And like, how do you structure that? Like to keep everybody, is it just, okay, well, first, I guess, does it come up a lot from your perspective or no?
It kind of does sometimes, yeah. If somebody's 90 or 80 or 90 years old, I'll say, I think it's probably time to gift out. It's probably time to pay somebody's mortgage off or go ahead and buy that house because you've got enough money and you're not going to outlive it. And it really helps to see that smile on their face while you're alive. That's something that you have the gift and the ability to be able to do. So let's do that also for estate planning purposes. But if it's not a good family situation, I typically will advise them to structure an inheritance payout based on, let's say the adult child is a scary heir, then I'll say, well, you have certain behaviors with especially the mentally ill scary heirs where they're not good with money, they're not good with relationships, and people with money will always attract people without money. And so you do not want to give that money outright. You want to give it to them in a children's trust and let them have that HEM statement on it. and talk to your attorney about that, because I'm not an attorney. All of this, I am not an attorney, but go ahead and ask attorneys these questions as an advisor and you'll get some good answers. But so I say, if they're, let's say you have a good adult child that, oh, not good, but an adult child that doesn't have any issues, but they own a business. You also don't want to give them assets, because if they get a divorce, their assets were obtained during a marriage and so therefore are accessible during a divorce. So you don't want to do that kind of thing. You just want to hang on to your assets until there's a reason to give it out. If there's, if your children are turning 50 and they're starting to get their first cancer, or if your children are dealing with a special needs if your grantor is dealing with a special needs grandchild, then you know, there's always going to be reasons to give money out. But to buy a house doesn't usually come up because of all these special needs situations and divorces and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting.
So I always say structure it so that you're giving payouts at certain age groups, because, you know, Social Security could not be there for your millennial child. So make sure there's a payout around age 65. I just tell them that divorces, Social Security, medical conditions, that's all going to happen later in life. So don't rush to go buying a house unless you have enough wealth to do that.
And like, what saves you more money if you gift it? The gift tax, what is that? I don't know, 10,000 a year or something, versus keeping it in your estate till you pass away and potentially being able to pass it tax free. I mean, ultimately, it should be better tax wise the longer you can keep the asset in your name before you. Does that?
It depends. If it's high capital gains, there's so many things to do right now. If you're high net worth, you could use the Delaware Trust, you could use the Charitable Remainder Trust, you could use conservation easements for land. There's a lot of different strategies to pass your wealth appropriately, and it's very dependent on, you know, when was the property purchased, which state are you in. Florida is notorious for attracting high net worth folks, because you can sell your whole property and everything you own in Ohio, move in a high state death tax state, and move to Florida and buy a mansion and a Bugatti, and there's no death tax. There's no state death tax. There's no federal death tax unless you have a net worth higher than, you know, 22 million if you're married, or 11 million if you're not. So there's a lot of different tax loopholes for high net worth people that they don't really have to gift if they don't want to.
So people,
now,
I
when you
assume,
get
move to Florida because they know this.
yeah, that's why the population there is aged, wealthy and aged, because they know.
I had no idea about that. I mean, I know people live in Florida because of no state tax, but they do have that other tax, right? It's like 7% on everything you do or something. I don't remember. But
Well, there's a lot of things about Florida that are different, but it is the best place to die. And you can tell. I mean, I lived in California. It was the best place to live, innovation, new ideas, inventions. And then I moved to Florida and it was like, we're done. We're not inventing anything.
yeah,
We're just going to
we've
live
got
here
golf courses and air
and
conditioning.
and none of us have an uncle named Sam. So
No, that's so funny.
yeah, it's really, estate tax planning is core to my practice, because if you have a high net worth, there are a lot of ways to avoid taxes right now. And even South Carolina, my other location that I operate in, South Carolinians do not want to get rid of their land. They are really upset and stigmatize anyone who lets go of their parents' land. And these are like 100-acre parcels.
Well, I bet
So
you don't want the
yeah,
Starbucks, right? Up
yeah.
in the neighborhood.
But it has happened already. So now there's a thing called a conservation easement where you can sell part of your property, as long as it's in a pretty populated area.
Yeah.
And you get audited when you do it because the government doesn't like it, but then you get a big tax credit. So if you had some land and you had a building with high capital gains, you would probably kind of do both. You would probably do a Delaware trust and a conservation easement and avoid a lot of capital gains tax. But every state is different. Everybody's playing the same game, and there's just a lot of product out there right now that is available, but it's an education you got to stay on top of.
So all that being said, is there one piece of advice that you'd give advisors who just want to be more proactive about just guiding their clients on estate planning and asset protection?
I would say too, one, start reaching out to people that work with AI because it's coming. And if you don't have a tax overlay strategy on your investment portfolios that harvest losses every 5 days, then you're kind of behind the times. You really need go use Russell as an asset manager and just pay for it because everybody's doing it. And two, go out and do some webinars with some estate planning attorneys so that you can learn the language. Let them do the presentation until you know the language and understand your state's rules. You know, when you're at your conferences, make sure you stop by and talk to the people offering the trustee services, because even if you don't know what you're doing, they will be on every call with you and the client, and they will get you through that first appointment and the second and the third. They will be there until you don't need them anymore.
This is awesome, Carolyn. If listeners want to learn more about your strategies, where they can connect with you and your content, where should they go?
I'm a secret. It's actually www.trustmattersfinancial.com, or you can just look me up on Facebook, Carolyn Bare Wealth Advisor, or LinkedIn, Carolyn Bare Miller, which is shout out to my husband. That's my husband's last name, Carolyn Bare Miller. Or you can make an appointment. My phone number is 864-324-4942. I'm always happy to talk. I think the world needs this. I think our community needs this as financial advisors, and I'm always happy to bring on a new advisor. So give me a call if you need me.
Absolutely. I think they're going to love this. This was great. This is a huge and important thing that people need to talk more about and address. So we loved having you on and hope to have you back soon. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a great week.
This video is for informational purposes only and should not be considered or relied upon as investment advice. It may not be copied, quoted, or referenced without Scion Investment's prior written consent. Do not rely upon any opinions, predictions, or forward-looking statements contained herein. The views expressed do not constitute an offer to sell or a solicitation to purchase securities, nor do they constitute the endorsement of a particular asset class or investment strategy. Neither Scion Investments nor its affiliates and/or subsidiaries warrant its completeness or accuracy. Certain information contained in this video may constitute forward-looking statements that may be inherently unreliable, and actual events or results may differ materially from those reflected or contemplated herein. Scion Investments expressly disclaims any obligation or undertaking to update or revise any information included herein. The views expressed by the guests or participants are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Scion Investments, LLC, or any of its subsidiaries, officers, or staff. Please be aware of the real risk of loss in following any investment strategy. No investment strategy or asset class referenced herein is intended to be construed as investment advice. You should make an independent, informed decision regarding any investments or strategies only after reviewing all relevant offering or disclosure documentation with your financial professional, and after considering your objectives, risk tolerance, and best interests before making any investment in any financial product. Registered personnel should review any business development initiatives addressed herein with their respective compliance and legal departments. Coverage of such topics should not be construed as compliance or legal advice. It is at the discretion of each respective firm if such practices are consistent with firm policies and procedures.